everybody. Welcome back to Brian Breaks Character. I am here with Sonia Jackson. And if you've not had the pleasure of meeting her, her smile is a delight. Her energy is a delight. Her laughter is infectious. And she is a force for good in the world. And that's why I wanted to have her on the podcast, because she's a performer and she marries performance with her purpose on this planet. And I'm going to let her tell us a lot more about that. But she has made it... the best way that I can describe it, what I love about it, Sonia, is that you've made yourself your own stage to insert your purpose and your performance at the same time. But I'm going to shut up now. And I would love for you to just share a little bit of your story with the listeners so they can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay. Well, it would start back in when I grew up, actually. My parents put me in dance classes because my legs were crooked. And I loved dance. And then I loved performance. And then all through high school, all through college, we performed. But I never really kind of thought about it as a legitimate job. And went into business and went into human resources. And the last full-time job that I had in that category, I was working in aerospace and I was making good money. And these people around me were not treating me very well. And I wasn't having any fun. And I thought, oh, there's got to be something else out there for me to do. So I became an actor, of course.
Logical, from HR to actor. It's typical, very typical journey. So you're the first one on this podcast for sure.
And I figured I had gotten enough information from the people I was working with to go into comedy. So I started doing stand-up because I didn't have anything else to go on my resume except a play that I wrote and produced when I was 7. It was a Christmas play. It was a great play. My mom even brought a Christmas tree, a little miniature Christmas tree to school. And when we performed it, and then I got upset with her because she took it and gave it away.
No, that was a
That was
keepsake.
my tree.
Yeah.
It was a really, as a 7-year-old, it's my personal tree. She took it and gave it away. As an adult, of course, I can recognize that she gave it to a family who needed it. So, of course, Mom, of course. But at the time, I was not having it. But when I became an actress, I was a little older. I was a little past ingenue. So a friend of mine suggested that I do a solo show to showcase my talents. And that's what I did. And I loved it because I was doing this show I called it I'm Gonna Fly, which was about Bessie Coleman, who was the first Black female to be licensed to fly in the United States. And it was a great show, and it was about determination. It was about living your dreams and going for it. So I was doing what she was doing. So it just felt like the right thing to do.
Right.
And then as I continued, I was really surprised when people weren't pounding down my door giving me starring roles in feature films, What's up with that?
Artist in my show, where's everybody? Yeah.
Yeah. So I continued to do plays. I do television, film. I did a bunch of stuff, and I started doing my own shows too because I felt, why sit around and wait? And I was doing the vagina monologues when the idea about one of my favorite shows that I wrote, Conversations About the Girls, came along.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to me because the vagina monologues were powerful. But I thought, Conversations About the Girls, and what I'm talking about are the girls right under our chin, for us ladies, women's breasts. So my play examines women's breasts and our relationship with that.
Yeah.
And I thought, people are talking about them all the time. You can't watch a TV show without somebody making a reference. You can't watch a movie without somebody making a reference. You can't walk through life without a cleavage bumping you in the face. So, hey, let's have some conversations about them in a way that's supportive and all of that. So that's one of the things that I wanted to do. My last show is Mama-isms that I wrote, and I still do that. But right now I'm focused on conversations because I just love that show.
Yeah, and if you all check out her website, you can see a lot of pictures and snippets. And what I love about Conversation with the Girls is it's also, we've been seeing breasts in artwork since anyone's ever picked up a written on a cave, probably, right? And so like this, I think that was so it was needed. This where it was needed, and you're about to have something called Breastival. We're right on the cusp of that. It sounds like. Can you share everybody a little bit about that? Because it looks super interesting and cool.
Yeah, we're presenting. Well, let me back up again.
Okay.
When I first started doing conversations about the girls, I was working in our prayer ministry at church. And so I was writing this play in between prayers and praying and whatnot. And a friend of mine said,
hold up. Was it a little bit of a funny content to be writing while you're in prayer ministry? Because no matter what, even if you got a real hip church, talking about boobs is a lot different than talking about God and Jesus or whatever. I mean, it's got to feel a little different. Did you feel a little, I don't know, like, look at me over here? Did you feel like a little bit like, did nothing?
No, not quite. I mean, because it's all God. So, hey, it's all spirit. So,
yes, this is true.
This is my body, and I've got to love my body, and they're a part of my body. Yeah. And so that was the whole thing too. They're a part of our bodies, but they're not necessarily who we are. So there's a lot that content that goes into the play. But my friend had said, that's really going to be a powerful piece. That's a powerful piece. So now let's look at it now. I have been doing this show for 17 years. She said that to me way back when I was writing it, and I would get it out there, and I would try and get it out to the next place and the next place. But you know how it is when you're producing your own theater. So what would happen was I could get the show up, and I didn't know how to get funding. I didn't know how to get backing, and so I just did it myself. But this year, I decided to do it on a whole new scale. And we're creating a star-studded cast with top-level actors and jazz singers and whoever else we can get, because all women have breasts, or we have had them. And so we're putting together a star-studded cast to present this and doing a Q&A afterwards. So, and we're asking women to get together and have a girls' night out. I'm sorry, girls' night in. I know. Yes. The world is opening up, and we're asking you to stay in. Yes. But go to dinner first. Go to dinner first, and then afterwards come home, be with your best friends, have a watch party, and watch and have conversations about your girls, your body, and feel uplifted, uplift each other. And that's what we're really looking for. We're asking for women to in sisterhood, stand up for each other. That's really kind of what we're asking.
And it all goes down on May 14th. So we've got time for that. We got time. And it is in association with the Susan G. Komen Foundation as well. So that's really incredible.
Yes. What we're doing is, after expenses, there's, sometimes you have to pay some people. So there are some people in this production getting paid. Two, my production manager and the editor.
Yes.
But everybody else is doing it on gratis because they love the subject and they love the idea. And so I get people who've been coming to us asking, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? Because 85% of the proceeds after expenses is going to go to Susan G. Komen.
Right.
So
that's awesome.
For research and education.
And what I see inside of this, Sonia, is your just drive to like, I got stories to tell. I got things to say, and I'm going to find the way to come hell or high water, come heaven or high water, I should say. I'm going to have it be, it's going to be seen. And I wanted to ask you about how we connect the dots to this. I'm a non-denominational reverend, you're a spiritual practitioner, and in my life, that's prayer or meditation. And for some of our listeners, it might be prayer, it might be meditation, their way that they communicate with something greater than themselves. And you are, I would like to say, an expert in that, or you've done a lot of study in that with your beautiful book, My Prayer Journal. And I wonder if you would be willing to share, how does this messaging of your book connect to the work that you do as an artist?
Well, I've really started to redefine that for myself over the last few years. And that came about because, social media. I'm going to tell you, it helped me define that, because somebody said, what we're doing, we want to put out in the world. So I was putting out my shows and I was putting out prayers and thoughts and affirmations and whatnot. And so I had a social media for my acting and I had a social media for my spiritual side. And then I just had to go, I'm sorry, they're not separate.
Ooh.
It's who I am.
Yeah.
I happen to love the divine. I know that there's a higher power, whatever you, like you said, whatever you want to call it, there's a higher power and it lives through me. It is the very essence of who I am. And it's the same truth for all of us is what my belief is.
Yeah.
And my skills, my mind, my understanding, my wisdom, my guidance, my creativity, my talent, it all comes from that source. And so they really aren't separate. They're just the one thing.
Yeah.
And I happen to probably talk about it differently than others because it's just a part of my life. So I don't really separate the two anymore. It's just a matter because, I talk about God. I talk about God like it's my career. I talk about love and peace. And if we're doing a scene or if we're at rehearsal or something and you break down or something, and I'm kind of like, okay, wait a minute. We need to take that to prayer. So let's take it into prayer. No, it's done. Okay, now we can get back into our scene. So
I love it.
It's a part of life. It's a part of life for me. It's not separate. So I call on it to guide me. And I let myself get steeped in it. And it's one of the things that my minister always says, don't move until you hear. Don't move until you hear what you're supposed to hear to move. And we forget. I forget, So sometimes it's a matter of bringing myself back down to, okay, I need to have a meditation here for a minute. I need to calm the chatter in my head because the chatter doesn't go away. It just calms down. It just gets clearer if we take the time to listen. So yeah, that's kind of me.
All right. So Sonia, for someone who heard what you just said and was like, oh, whoa, that meant something to me, or that moved something in me, or I felt something when you said that, or I would like to have that kind of clarity for that first person who may only be familiar with meditation or has never tried prayer. And I want everyone to just hear like, while I don't believe that prayer has to have a dogma attached to it. So if you're some kind of religious averse person right now, I want to really make sure that you hear that what I'm saying, and I think Sonia's saying this too, is the belief that there's something greater than yourself that you are always in constant communication with. And that I would love for you, Sonia, just to share with that starting out person who's like, well, I feel foolish doing this, or I don't know how to start this. Can you give us a primer on how you would say to begin that conversation?
Well, the first thing I would say is to just recognize that it's between you and the higher self. So if you need to go in a closet because in your household it's busy or whatever, go in a closet. Or, if you need to just pull the covers over your head and sit on the bed, whatever you need to do to be with yourself, just to take a few minutes. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to sit in a lotus position. You don't have to do anything. Sometimes you can just go to the beach, go to the park, sit on a park bench, watch children play. You can meditate with your eyes open. You can meditate with your eyes closed. You can do a walking meditation. You can use a labyrinth that sometimes people do.
Yeah.
Just to take the time to close your eyes, breathe deep, and let yourself relax and listen internally. Just focus on your breath, your breathing, feeling maybe your chest rise and fall or your tummy rise and fall, and just let yourself be so relaxed that you listen and ask yourself a question. Ask yourself a question.
What if I'm trying to get perfect with my questions? Can you help me? I'm like, what's the perfect question? There's something that comes over us when we do this at times. We're like, well, I got to ask the right thing. And I do need to be in the lotus position and I have to light a candle and I got to make everything. If I'm doing this, it's got to be exactly right or not. It's not going to work or like I'm doing it wrong. Can you help for those of us who are not feeling like you're doing it right? Like, what do you want us to hear? What would you like to, if you could help us all, what would you say to us?
I would say every way you do it is the right way to do it. Is if you sit and just breathe with an intention of, I am going to open myself to the higher power, or I am just going to relax into this, or I'm going to ask for help or guidance about knowing the right thing to do, or whatever it is. Sometimes I'll just ask a question before I go to sleep. And then when I wake up in the morning, before I move, before I get out of bed, I'll just lay there and say, thank you, thank you, thank you, and wait for the answer to come.
Yeah.
There's an answer that always comes.
Yeah.
And because there's no perfect way to do it, except that you do it.
Yes.
Is to take time to listen for your own internal guidance, for your own understanding. It's I find it helpful for me.
Yeah.
I find it peaceful for me.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful the way you say that, because I talk about this in some of the work that I do, and even on the podcast, I think we've talked about, sometimes you don't get an answer right away, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you continue to allow yourself to be open to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there's an answer coming, and the answer will come when the time that you need that answer, it will be there when it's time for you to have it.
And sometimes it comes while you're washing dishes.
Totally.
Yeah. So it comes while you're like doing laundry, or you're doing something that doesn't you have no attachment to, and you're just, because some people want to say, I do my Tai Chi and the answers will come. Yes. Yeah, I'm folding clothes,
Yeah, totally. Yes, totally. And because like the way you look at that tree, you suddenly have the new thought, and you like made yourself open to it or whatever, right? And then there's this other thing that happens, and I wonder, Sonia, if you can help me in my own practice and then others in their practice. And I just appreciate you being willing to tap into this talent that you have for understanding this. I know that you believe we all have this talent, but your willingness to articulate it here just on this podcast and share with us just means so much to me, because I know a lot of people can be helped with this kind of help, this understanding that we already have this language and we've forgotten it sometimes. And so one of the things that comes up for me is like, the answer I get is, I don't like the answer. No. You're supposed to say, yeah, you're supposed to say, yes, you should go on vacation for 6 weeks. Or you're supposed to say, yes, you are supposed to buy that sweatshirt. Or yes, you're like that. There's like, we can call the answer unreasonable. And so what is your relationship with that? How does that show up for you?
We never, so there's a saying, God's plan is bigger than our own. Mm-hmm. And we can't outgive God, or, there's all sorts of sayings like that. And I use God, I use spirit, I use love, I use the universe. It's all the same to me. It's greater. And I'll give you an example. In Brestival, we're doing the show, and it's a star-studded cast that we're having.
Right.
And one of my stars who said yes, is not going to be able to do it like she thought she was going to be able to do it. And, you get those messages and you read them and you go, now, a couple of years ago, I would have gone,
For sure, yeah.
But when I got the message this time, I kind of went, okay. Yeah. There's an answer. So if I believe that if I ask for something, it is given, then I have to say that what I've asked for in terms of my cast, it's been given. And I have to remember to stand in that, because the thing is, thoughts are things. And have you ever noticed, you start thinking a thought and more of that same kind of thought comes, no matter what it is. So if you're thinking about, oh, I shouldn't eat this, that's going to do this. Oh, then it's going to do that. And I'm going to feel this bad. And oh my gosh, if I do that. And before you know it, you're just upset about that food. And instead, even if you think you shouldn't eat it, it's like, I'm going to eat this. I know it's sugary, but it's going to make me feel good for a moment. I won't eat as much of it. Maybe I'll only eat half of it. Oh, that'll be good. And then I can, because part of it is the journey. So
Yeah.
if I have this donut and I only eat a little bit, then I can have more of it later. So then if I have some of it later, then it's like eating a donut for an hour. Oh my gosh, how good is that?
Yes, 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 yes.
So anyway, back to the other story. So she said she couldn't do it. And so I just pondered that thought.
Mm.
And so I responded back to her. And then what happened was another idea came before I started the email, and then I left it, and then I came back, and then I left it, and I came back. And what we always say is take inspired action. Don't react, just take inspired action.
Mm.
So if I had just gotten the note and read it and emailed her right back, I who knows what would have happened.
Right.
But instead, I let Spirit tell me, okay, what should I say here? How should I say this? And what came up were 3 possibilities that were going to be more helpful than if I had just responded or reacted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put the 3 possibilities in an email. I sent them off. And she responded back saying, "Yeah, okay." And I thought, how great is that?
Yes, yes.
So it's there's a trust that we have to sometimes have that is harder if we're looking at what our eyes see, because our eyes don't always tell the truth. Our eyes say, we look at our bank account and our eyes say, there's nothing in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into the spiral that says there's nothing in it. But if we have asked for it and believe that there's a higher power out there that's moving heaven and earth to bring it to me, there's 8 billion people on this planet that it can come through. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's going to come through some of them.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to be able to go, okay, that number in my bank account is growing. And I can just keep seeing it growing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll keep growing because we have that thought about it and we let those additional thoughts, oh, that's going to be good. And if I get that, then I'll be able to do this. I'm going to be able to do that. And that grows.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have that growing than having despair growing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And there's also 2 things I want to just unpack. You said so many amazing things there, but one of them is we are attracting or saying yes to the positive, abundant, greater good intentioned thought instead of saying yes to the other thought. Because we could certainly entertain and fantasize and daydream about the horrible things about our bank account at any given moment. We could say, yeah, I'm totally allowed. I have free will. I'm allowed to do that if I want to. But I also have to just be like, and I know that that's definitely not what the universe wants for me, but I'm allowed to do it if I feel like I want to punish myself for a while. I can do that for if I want to. But I can also say, that is planetarily what I see, but I also have another belief. I also know something else, or I'm also certain of something else, right? And that other thing you said that I thought was, I don't want anybody to miss this, where you said you wrote the email and then you left it and then you wrote it and you went back. That little magical time right there, that is the time that I think so many of us can abandon because we want to cross the thing off. We want to finish the to-do list and we want to get more productive. And I often think that efficiency can be the enemy of wisdom. We want to, let's take a step. Let's go. Great. Yeah. It will be okay if this person hears from me tomorrow. Let me give myself a 24-hour moment here. Like, let's see what's going on with me. And let's really respond in a thoughtful way. And, you can complain about it for 10 minutes. Oh, dang it. That person canceled. I don't know what to do or whatever you needed to get it out. And then, okay, I'm clear again. And you said what was so beautiful is you already had the, how interesting. Let's see what this is, how this is going to unfold. Right. Because we all can't always be so eloquent about the situation, right? In our thinking. But I think that moment is so that what you described, that back and forth to give ourselves permission to say, let me wait till I don't think my inspired action's here yet. I haven't found it yet. It isn't feel, I don't feel that way about it yet. So Thank you for that. I think that was a really great primer for those of us who maybe feel like we're baby prayer makers or baby meditationers. In looking at the work that you've done, and you also do a lot of speaking, and that's what I saw from when I was when I was looking at can she come on the podcast, right? And when you're speaking, what is your favorite, what is your favorite thing to share with a group? If if I'm handing your microphone right now and you're speaking at my conference and you could say, this is the topic of what I wanted to talk about, what would that be for you, Sonia?
Oh man, one never knows because, if you're really, I usually try and if there's a theme, then of course that I'm there for the theme.
Right.
But if not, I generally kind of try and feel in or tap into the room to see what's going on and what people might be saying, what people might be thinking, or I'll get guidance on that at a particular moment that says, "Oh, talk about that," something else that would happen because so I never really know what I'm going to always say,
Yeah.
but I think probably the thing that I would do or talk about always is how we can create more of our life than we think we can. Because I'm still working on it. I am a work in progress, trust me. But I know that what we can do is spend more time on our focus about what we want instead of focusing on what we don't want. And that's really sometimes a hard concept because we're living in a world where the physical is right there with us all the time. So just as an example, especially in our bodies, if we have a pain in our body, everywhere we go, that pain's there. Everything we do, that pain is there. It's in the forefront of our mind. If it's, if we're thinking about our bank account, we don't necessarily think about that all the time. But if we're thinking about our bodies, every time we get up or out of a chair or sit back down, it may bring it up again. So how we react to that, how we react to our physical world, how we can interact with it and in terms of our belief system, I think we get what we believe. I think we get what we believe, and we don't always understand that. So there's a sense of trying to what I like to have people think about is to focus on what they want and to start to see how that feels different. How it feels different. So if you have a thought about, oh gosh, the sun is shining outside. It's sunny shining. And oh, look at how things are green outside. Oh, the flowers are growing. And you just keep having better and better thoughts about that. What we were talking about before, the same thing. If it's raining outside, oh, it's raining. It's gloomy. I have to stay inside. Or you can go, it's raining outside. Oh my goodness. Here in Southern California, we need that rain. I'm so glad it's raining. Oh gosh, that means I don't have to wash my car. Oh, isn't that great? Because you can see my car needs it. So however we choose to, we make the choice. We make the choice in how we want to think.
Yeah.
And how we think is how it shows up in our world, how we feel. So often, sometimes we get up in the morning and we go back to looking for our problems. We went to sleep and didn't have any care in the world.
That just gave me the shivers. We wake up in the morning and we go back to looking for our problems. That is, we want to pick them back up again. And I think, the gift of sleep, why does the human body need sleep? Why were we given bodies that need sleep is to wash off what you've picked up in the day before to help you step out of that consciousness to come back
to rejuvenate.
Yes, into you. The first thing you want to do is pick up your old which is why I always say, like, it's a really good practice not to pick up your phone first thing when you get up in the morning, because it's going to zoom in before your authentic desires even get to show up, right? I just love when you started to interrupt you there, but that gave me the shivers to think about it that way. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so, when we wake up, let's wake up and say how we want the day. How do we want to spend the day? I was listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he has, what would be my ideal self to be today? And I had to go look up the word ideal so I could really get clear on what that meant, And there's it's the higher imagined self of who I am, who I can be. And what if we lived from that today? What if we lived from joy today? What if we lived from happy today? And if somebody came in our little purview or whatever and wasn't happy, you can try to say, bless them. Bless them. Keep, having my shield of love. Nothing can permeate my shield of love but love.
Right. I love when you say that, your shield of love, because I think, what a lot of, especially the actors who are listening, we can get very wrapped up in comparison and compare and despair. And I think that the shield of love you just described is kind of a way to even relate to that, where say that person's succeeding, I'm going to let in their success because their success is part of my success. Some way to relate to that as a way to welcome it, welcome their success.
Great way.
Right?
Great way to look at it.
One of the things that you talk about is, and I love the language you use, is how to pirouette. Can you teach everybody what you mean when you say that?
Oh, pirouette. You know what a pirouette is?
Yeah, you turn out one leg.
Move.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of a flourish move. You reach out with your arms and your leg, and you whip yourself around and go up on one toe or half toe, however you're doing it. And then you come out of it with your arm, with a flourish, and you land in kind of an extended position. Right. And so everybody's been talking about pivot.
To the point where we're tired of hearing it.
Pivot here. Okay, I'm going to pivot. And I thought, I don't want to pivot. I want to pirouette. If I'm going to shift from one thing to another, I want it to have a flourish. I want it to look beautiful, and I want to come out of it with grace, So when I use pirouette instead of pivot, somebody else would go, oh, such and such happened. Pivot, let's pivot. We can pivot. We can, that sounds so hard. It's like, yes. But if I pirouette, there's a little bit of grace in there. There's a little bit of ease in there.
It's a little bit sexy too, I would say. I think it's a little sexy. Yeah. It's a little more in your body. Pivot feels very of the mind, and pirouette feels like we're going to use our body. And I love that. I love even that switch of that word is so helpful.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was looking at when getting ready for today is we were talking a little bit about how you shift fear into knowledge that guides us instead of stopping us. Can you speak a little bit on that for us?
Yes. Fear, we have this thing about fear that we don't want to be fearful, or we don't want to have fear, or I'm afraid to do this. And trust me, like I said before, I am still a work in progress. But what I've been learning about fear is that fear, it's just information. And if we look at fear as information, it has no power over us. We give our fears the power. So we say, and we sometimes don't even acknowledge the fear. We procrastinate, and we call it, I was just procrastinating. But what is that procrastination? It's something you don't want to do. Why do you not want to do that thing? Because if I do that thing and it doesn't work out, then I failed. But if you don't do it, you don't fail or succeed. So what is that? So if we actually face what we think is a fear, and we have to look at the whole thing. Fear is fear, which could be flight or fight type thing, but
Mm-hmm.
fear is also worry is fear, doubt is fear, trepidation is fear. All of those different levels, they're just a different level of fear. And
Right.
if we look at it and find out, what is it telling me? What are you trying to tell me? Then we can then decide, oh, I know what to do about that. Or
Mm.
I know where I can get the answer so I can do something about it. And
Yeah.
if we've gotten the information from that, then we can move forward. So I call it, ask. It's the ABCs is ask, and then allow yourself to be with it. Be.
Mm.
What is the fear? Be with it. And then start to let yourself be comfortable with fear. Because fear, what it really does is it just tells, like I was saying, it tells us something. But the reason we get fearful is because it's unknown. We
Mm.
don't know. And when we were little kids, not knowing was fun. Ooh, I'm going to explore over there. Ooh, that looks like interesting. Ooh, wow. When we were kids, it was great. But when we became adults, it was like, I know this. I know that. I know how to do this. And it's like, and if we didn't, we were hiding or covering it up. Yeah, well, I don't need to know that. But
Mm.
if we allow ourselves and think about it, especially us as actors, because we look for jobs every day. Every day. Even if we got a job, we look for jobs every day. But if we don't know what's going to happen, if we don't know what someone's going to say, we could be living in fear all the time.
Mm.
What we've asked for is unknown. So because we don't know what it is, so we don't know how it's going to come out. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. We get uncomfortable. So we get nervous, which is a level of fear. We get nervous. And if we get really nervous, then that can be a big problem. That can take us into full-blown fear. It can take
Right.
us into worry. It can take us into anxiety and stress and all that other stuff. But if we get comfortable with unknown, then we're not worrying about it. And then we
Mm.
can just kind of like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
They said yes. Great. Oh, they said no. Okay. Next job. What I need to do.
Yeah.
So we don't wrap all of our hopes and dreams around one little thing. We
Right.
start to figure it out.
Right. And I love the way, excuse me, I love the way that you talked about fear almost being it's a guide, another guide on our
Mm-hmm.
road here, a little guide to, and the part that I think I want to really, it was ask, be, and comfortable, right? Those are the three,
Mm-hmm.
the ABCs, right? And I love
Yeah.
that ask, because I think fear, we usually have, I think C.S. Lewis says this. He says that I didn't know fear would be so much like grief and we just want to run away from it. When in
Hmm.
fact, what we're saying with this ABC is let's lean in a little bit and try to almost listen, ask our fear. What is it you need? What are you asking for from me? And the being part is the part that's like, yeah, don't run, stay here, be. I love that way you said that, is be. Don't run from when you ask the question, then be there and listen and be with what you find out, and that we can become more comfortable as a pattern. Because
Mm-hmm.
even that little ABC feels like in the moment when you got that email, that ABC went right through you. The fear didn't even get to register because I was already on to wondering. You were already wondering, well, what's
Mm-hmm.
this going to bring instead? You were already in the curiosity of what's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
next. I love that.
And then there's actually one more. D
Yeah.
is
Okay.
to decide, make a decision about what you're going to do.
Did you ever find, this is one thing where I always get challenged as a coach at times, because sometimes the decision is, oh, and no action is the right action. And I
Mm-hmm.
always want to make sure we always advocate for, sometimes the action is, oh, and I don't need to send that email. And oh, I need to do nothing. I need to take a bath actually and just forget about this. Or it is, I need to make the phone call, or I need to send the difficult email, or whatever it is. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that to decide is don't forget that deciding to do nothing is a decision. I think that's an
That
important,
is.
right? That it is always, but there's a difference between doing nothing out of I'm ignoring versus I'm choosing that this is actually a place where there's no action needed from me other than a prayer or a release or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
And there's a comfort to that.
Totally. Especially when you have a consciousness around it. Otherwise you feel like, did I finish that? Is it done? Is it still going to come up to get me? Right? So one of the things that you created these 3 solo shows, right? And one of the things that I was noticing is that you said that all of our lives are a solo show. Anyone's life is a solo show, right? And you can create and that we can using it to challenge our natural assumptions. We can create our own stories around that. Anybody who was it vulnerable for you to go like, I'm making these shows and I'm putting myself out there after being in HR and being in this aerodynamics place, and now I'm going to suddenly be here out putting myself on the line. Was that vulnerable for you?
Oh, that's interesting. Not really.
I love that. You're like, this is it just felt natural.
It felt natural. It felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing. Felt like that's where I was. And I had a really great teacher at the beginning. I had a friend of mine, BB Besh, and she's no longer here, but she was a wonderful teacher and director. And she taught me, she was my first solo show director, and she taught me a lot about what I needed to know as an actor and how to bring the story alive. And you start to learn things. So as she directed me, just as an example, in my first solo show, I'm Gonna Fly, Bessie's father left the family. And so I have a scene in the show where he comes home, and for her, she's just watching him chop wood. But for me as the actor, what was culminating in that whole moment was he was making a decision about what he was going to do. And I don't really think he left the family to leave the family. He left the family to go get work because there was no work where he was. And he left the family to go get work. But in the scene, I had this whole thing of what I was watching as little Bessie. And in chopping wood, what we did a sound effect of chopping wood. Boom, chop, chop. And it would get louder and louder. And as it got louder, I got more emotional. And it was a great scene. And then jump ahead a few times after doing it, a couple of years, we lost the sound effect of the chopping wood.
Okay.
And I was like, my sound engineer, we were there, he goes, I can't find it. I'm going, what? He said, I cannot find it. I looked, I can't find it. I said, okay, are you sure? So there was that moment of, so the question was, okay, well, I guess we'll just do it without it because had to do it because it was about showtime then.
Oh, got it.
So I did the show. We had no sound effect, but in my head, I could hear it. And in my head, because I always could see him, I always see him doing the action. It was there. And so it was right there with me. So my vulnerability, my being alive for the show in the moment, that's something that BB had taught me to do, to be, and all of that. And so in some of the shows, there are scenes that are vulnerable, but I just tell the truth. So that's what it is. I'm just telling the truth. For me, I don't think of it as being vulnerable. I think of it as telling the truth. Now, do I put every single last truth of my life in it? No. I put some.
Yeah.
But not every single one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But I think even listening to what you say, that what I take from this even is like, um, that the performance piece of it too is like, well, this is what we do. I'm going to get out here and tell the story. That these stories mean something to me. This is something I want to do. And so that the purpose almost overcame any amount of like second guessing. It sounds like you really became a student during the writing of these pieces, where like, I'm willing to be a student and bring that to this, bring my beginner's mind to creating these pieces that speak to me, that allow me to showcase my talent at the same time. Because I'm sure a lot of actors are also listening and inspired by, oh, she went out there and she did it. She found stories that really, she told stories that meant something to her, that really created a mission for her. And so I love that you even call what you do is, I think you called it edutainment, I think is what I think is a word I read somewhere. Is that right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
I didn't make up that word. A lot of people have been using it for
Yeah.
years, but I find it perfect because what we're about, or what I have found, actually, as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
it was to make people laugh. Making people laugh was the most fun. And to play in front of them, and run around back and forth, and that was the most fun that I had. So being able to jump up in front of people and tell a story, or do something, or do a little dance, or all of that. My mom had us singing, of course, too. My mother played the piano, so
Yes.
we sang, and everything. And so it was always performing. And then as I got older, I was a teenager and I did babysitting, I would tell stories to kids. I would just
Mm.
make them up, and it was the table talked. And what did the table say? The table told the tree it didn't like it because it was not flat. And so we just, whatever came to
Right.
mind. And
Right.
these little, and I would find parents coming back to me later on going, what was that story about the tree and the table? And I'm going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And because their kids were going, I want that story, And she goes, where is the story? I said, I don't know. I made it up. And so I loved telling stories. And then you find that if you can tell somebody else's story. In conversations about the girls,
Mm-hmm.
my girls are an A cup on a
Okay.
good day. They're an A cup. So I do not represent all of the girls around the world,
Yeah, sure.
but I can speak for them. So I tell stories so that people get a better understanding. So in conversations about the girls, there are stories about getting breasts. There are stories about wishing to get breasts. There are stories about bras. There are stories about cancer. There are stories about my mom had cancer. There are stories about I had cancer. There are stories about this. So there's all kinds of stories.
Right.
And so I wrote a piece not too long ago about sometimes the story isn't ours to tell. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm talking about the girls and I'm talking about not only my stories, I want women to recognize their stories. I want women to recognize themselves. And I get all sorts of things that come back to me. And I want to have people have an opportunity to think about them and maybe change the way they're living or change the way they're interacting with somebody. Because I had a young girl. I was doing the show in Phoenix at a church there. Yeah, progressive churches I go to.
We like it.
And so they were making an announcement that the play was going to happen that afternoon or that evening or whatever it was. And one of the young ladies in the church came up to me afterwards and said she was planning to come. And she was telling me a story about her. She was probably 20, 21, and she had some kind of an issue, and I can't remember the issue at the moment, but she had a specific issue with her
Mm-hmm.
breasts. And at 12, she was taken to the doctor. Her mother took her to the doctor. And her mother, loving, wonderful mother that she was, didn't think about it. But when she took her daughter to the doctor was a man.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing the man doctor did was examine her. And after she's now 12, 13, just now getting her breasts, and she's trying to she's feeling more private about it. He's going, I'm a pediatrician. Just take off your blouse,
Right.
And so she had this horrible experience that she was still talking about at the age of 20 because it had affected her so much.
Yeah.
So I tell the stories, and we talk about, and I want people to talk about have conversations about it afterwards, so that they can think of different ways to interact with each other, in different ways to interact with their children, with their daughters, or whatever. So sometimes the stories we need to tell, they aren't all our own, but we have the ability to tell them.
Yeah. And I love the way that you said that also, because I can just see how it sparks a sensitivity. It sparks a conversation that you might not normally have. It becomes a fireside chat sitting around afterwards after you've seen the show, of all the highs and lows of the show, and also like what it sparked inside of you, and how I'm thinking about myself differently, how I'm thinking about the people in my life differently. And I can just, like, the art of storytelling obviously is what we're saying here, but to have focused it in such a unique and fun and touching and beautiful way that is also physical, which I think is something, sometimes the stories can be very heady, or can be not dealing with it. To actually deal with, we're talking about bodies here. And I think that is such a powerful way for you to be telling the story. And so everyone who's listening, I hope that you will check out Conversations About the Girls on May 14th. If you go to visionsofpossibilities.org, we can get our tickets. Isn't that right? I get that right?
Yes, there's a button there. Click. I'm finding out that there's a couple of little issues maybe, but I think don't do an autofill. You shouldn't do an autofill with your credit card anyway. You should put it in each number at a time.
Great.
But yeah.
Great.
Visions of Possibilities.
Great. Visionsofpossibilities.org. We can check out the show. And Sonia, as we wrap things up here, is there anything else you'd like to leave this audience of creatives and actors with that you weren't able to say today? I want to make sure you have a time to say anything else you might want to say.
Do we have a minute?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Okay. How about a quick prayer?
I would love it. Yes. And we don't have to be in a lotus position or lighting candles. You can be wherever you are, y'all. Wherever you are. Listen to this. If you're in the car, it's okay. If you're going on a walk, if you're in the bathtub, wherever you are, it's the perfect spot.
Yes. And so how good it is to know in this moment that there is only one power, and that power that is greater than each and every one of us, but it lives as each and every one of us in our own individual beingness. So I'm so grateful to speak this word in this moment, to speak this word for each person who's hearing it, so that they know that the truth of their being is that within them is a divine idea. They are a divine idea, and the idea that they have for being creative, for expressing the way they express, for being an actor, for being a talented individual, a performer or a singer, a dancer, whatever it is that they are, it is the divine expressing within them, and it was gifted to them. That talent was gifted to them in such a way for them to be able to express it, to touch other lives, to uplift other individuals, to express the power and the creativity that they are. So here is the avenue for them to do that. And we're knowing that each and every one is blessed, and each and every one allows that blessing within them to so shine that every audition that they go to, every time that they speak, every time that they sing, every time that they open their mouths to express that power within them, the divine shines through in such a way that the room is touched, that the people are touched, and it reaches vibrational levels beyond anything that they had ever imagined. So we know this to be the truth about who and what they are, and that they are cared for, divinely guided and directed in all things and in all ways. Knowing this is so, we just give thanks for this truth, and we just let it be. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Amen. Thank you so much, Sonia. I'm so grateful for that beautiful rally cry for my spirit just now. Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel so grateful that you spent this time with us today. And I appreciate every listener here today for this very special episode. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.